My wife's phone buzzed on the kitchen island at 2:47 in the morning, and the name lighting up the screen made my stomach drop. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a coworker I had never met. It was my brother-in-law. Marcus. My sister's husband. I stood there in the dark kitchen, holding a phone that wasn't mine, staring at a message preview that began with 3 words I would never forget. Can't stop thinking. The screen locked before I could read the rest. Pause. 6 years earlier, I would have told you Jessica was the best thing that ever happened to me. I would have meant every word. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. She was the maid of honor, confident and impossible to ignore, dark hair falling past her shoulders, curves poured into a champagne-colored dress, and a laugh that carried across the reception hall and found me before I even found her. I noticed her before we were introduced. By the end of the night, we had talked so long that the staff had started clearing tables around us, and I remember thinking I'd never wanted anyone the way I wanted her. We married 2 years later. My sister Emily cried through most of the ceremony. Marcus, who had already been married to Emily for 8 years, stood beside me as my best man. He had become more than my brother-in-law, the man who helped me move, stood beside me at our father's funeral, and treated me like a brother. Our 2 families folded into each other so completely that holidays stopped being about which house to visit. There was only one house, one table, one family. That was what made the last 6 months feel so wrong, even before I had a reason to name it. Jessica started coming home later from the gym. She would say she had added another class or stayed to help a friend, but her explanations were always a little too detailed, as if she had rehearsed them before walking through the door. Her phone started sleeping face down on nightstands and countertops. At dinner, she would angle the screen away from me, smile at something, and type a fast reply. If I asked what was funny, she would say it was nothing worth explaining. At Emily and Marcus's house for Sunday dinner, Jessica and Marcus had developed a strange rhythm of never quite looking at each other directly. They could spend an entire evening in the same room without exchanging more than a few words, yet they always seemed aware of where the other person was. Once, I found them standing alone on the back porch in complete silence. Marcus immediately asked me about work, and Jessica went inside. I noticed it and chose not to think about it. He was family. He was practically my brother. Pause. The night the phone buzzed on the counter, I had gotten up for water. Jessica had left the phone beside the coffee maker after returning from what she called a short walk around the block. The walk had lasted almost an hour. The screen lit up on its own. Marcus's name. Can't stop thinking. I stood there long enough for the refrigerator to cycle off and the kitchen to become completely silent. My reflection in the dark window over the sink no longer looked like the face of a man who trusted his wife. I didn't unlock the phone. I told myself it was because I didn't know her passcode. That wasn't true. It was our anniversary. I simply wasn't ready for whatever waited on the other side of those 4 numbers. Instead, I returned the phone to the exact place where I had found it and stood in the kitchen until the sky began turning gray. I thought about 6 years of birthdays and Christmas mornings, and all the moments Jessica and Marcus had disappeared at different times during family gatherings. Mostly, I thought about Emily. My sister trusted Marcus completely. They had 2 children, a house they had spent years fixing, and a life that seemed so stable I had sometimes envied it. If the message meant what I feared it meant, I wasn't the only person standing on the edge of losing everything. When Jessica came downstairs for coffee, she kissed my cheek as if nothing in the world had changed. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." For the first time in our marriage, that was the only honest thing I said to her all morning. I watched her reach for the phone, unlock it without hesitation, and pause. Just for a second. Then she slipped it into her pocket and smiled at me. "Everything okay?" The question was almost convincing. "Of course," I said. She trusted that I would never look through her phone. She had no idea I had already decided that the next time I had the chance, I would. I waited 3 days before I touched Jessica's phone again. 3 days of watching her make coffee, ask about work, and laugh at our usual television shows as if nothing had changed. The normality was the most frightening part. On the 4th night, she fell asleep early. I waited until her breathing became slow and even, then carried her phone into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. It felt less like invading her privacy and more like breaking into my own life. The code hadn't changed. Still our anniversary. The screen unlocked on the first try. I almost wished it hadn't. Pause. There was no recent conversation under Marcus's name. For a moment, I felt relief. Then I searched the message history for the exact words I had seen on the lock screen. Can't stop thinking. One result appeared. The conversation was saved under M. My sister's name. It was clever. If I had glanced at Jessica's screen during dinner, I would have assumed she was texting Emily about groceries, birthdays, or the children's schedules. The disguise wasn't something chosen in panic. It was evidence that the deception had been planned. Almost a year of messages stared back at me. Not weeks. Not a single mistake after too much wine at a family gathering. 11 months. Good mornings. Good nights. Private jokes. Complaints about their spouses. Messages written while all 4 of us had been sitting in the same room. Marcus told Jessica she was the only person who understood him. Jessica told Marcus she felt like she'd chosen the wrong life. They talked about meeting in parking lots, about a restaurant outside the city, about a hotel 40 minutes away where they believed no one would recognize them. There were photographs too. I stopped opening them after the first few. Then I found a message from 3 weeks earlier, timestamped 11:52 p.m., the night I had fallen asleep on the couch after a double shift. Jessica had written, "He's out cold. Come to the back door." Marcus had answered with one word, "Already outside." My own brother-in-law had stood in my backyard while I slept 20 feet away. I don't remember sitting down on the edge of the bathtub, but that was where I found myself when I finally looked up from the screen. I was gripping the phone so tightly my hand hurt. The first emotion wasn't anger. It was grief. Scrolling through those messages, I could see the exact week when my marriage had split into 2 versions, the one I thought I was living, and the one Jessica was hiding from me. Pause. Near the most recent messages, something else caught my eye. It wasn't a plan laid out step by step, it was smaller than that, and somehow colder. Marcus had written, almost in passing, that they shouldn't rush anything. That if they just let enough time pass after both marriages quietly fell apart, nobody would ever think to connect the dates. Jessica had answered with a single line, "As long as no one ever has to know when it really started." That was all. 11 words. But I read them 4 times, because I understood exactly what they meant. They weren't just hiding an affair anymore. They were already imagining a future where the timeline got rewritten, where Emily and I became the reason 2 marriages failed, instead of the reason 2 people finally stopped lying. The message that had appeared at 2:47 that morning was farther down. Can't stop thinking about what it will be like when we don't have to hide. And beneath it, from Jessica, after the anniversary. Give it a few weeks. My parents' 40th anniversary party was less than a month away. I needed proof that couldn't disappear with one deleted conversation. I took out my own phone and photographed everything, the contact name, the dates, the messages about the hotel, the visit to our back door. I recorded a slow video as I scrolled through the thread so the timestamps were clear. Then I sent copies to a private email account Jessica didn't know existed. I closed every screen, reconnected the charger, and placed the phone exactly where I had found it. I didn't sleep. I lay beside Jessica and listened to her breathe, understanding that I was lying next to someone who had already started imagining a version of our future where none of this was her fault. The next morning, I texted my sister. "Are you free for coffee this week? Just us." Emily answered within a minute. "Of course." Is everything okay? I stared at the question for a long time. I need to talk to you about Marcus. The typing bubble appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Finally, her reply came. Thursday. The coffee shop near my office. Please don't say anything to either of them before then. That message frightened me almost as much as the one at 2:47. When I sat down across from Emily 2 days later, she looked as if she hadn't slept in weeks. She wrapped both hands around her coffee but didn't drink. I had prepared a dozen different ways to begin. I never used any of them. Before I could speak, my sister looked directly at me and said 4 words. I already know, Ryan. Emily later told me exactly how she had discovered the affair. 2 months earlier, she had returned a day early from a work conference. She wanted to surprise Marcus, so she didn't call ahead. His truck was in the driveway, but when she tried the front door, she realized she'd left her keys in the side pocket of her travel bag. Rather than search for them in the rain, she walked around to the back door, where they kept a spare key hidden. The light over the kitchen sink was on. Through the window of the house she shared with Marcus, she saw her husband standing with Jessica, close enough that there was no innocent explanation. Marcus touched Jessica's face, and Jessica leaned toward him with the familiarity of someone who had been there before. Emily didn't go inside. She walked back to her car, drove 2 blocks, and sat there until her hands stopped shaking. Then she called Marcus and told him the conference had been extended and she wouldn't be home until the next night. She wanted to see what he would do with the time. Within 20 minutes, Jessica left through the back door. Emily watched her go. Pause. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice came out quieter than I expected. I tried, Emily said. I drove to your house twice. The first time, Jessica was there. The second time, you were talking about your anniversary trip. You looked happy, and I kept thinking that once I said it, I could never take it back. She looked down at her coffee. Then I started wondering if Marcus would convince everyone I'd misunderstood. I had one moment through a window and no proof. He spent years being the reasonable one in every room. I thought he'd turn it around on me. I wanted to be angry that she had waited. Then I understood she had spent 2 months carrying both betrayals, what Marcus had done to her, and what she knew it would eventually do to me. You don't have to prove it anymore, I said, and set my phone on the table between us, open to everything I'd found. Emily read in silence. Her expression changed when she reached the messages where Marcus called her cold, even while she'd been quietly trying to fix things between them. It changed again when she reached the line Jessica had written back to him, as long as no one ever has to know when it really started. He's been saying that to me too, she whispered. That we've grown apart. That maybe neither of us has been happy in years. Jessica's been saying the same thing to me. They were preparing us, Emily said. For all of it to just look like it happened on its own. Neither of them was waiting for the right time to confess. They were quietly building a version of events where nobody could blame them for anything. Pause. There was one more thing, Emily told me. A supposed fishing trip earlier that week, Marcus gone before sunrise, back that evening with nothing but an empty cooler and a story about a slow day at the lake. Except the lake's access road had been closed since Sunday. In his jacket pocket, Emily had found a receipt from a small restaurant near the airport, 2 meals purchased at 12:18 that afternoon. On the back, someone had written the name of an apartment complex. I looked it up. Short-term furnished rentals. Neither of us spoke for a moment. They're not just planning to leave, Emily finally said. They're already looking for where. Mom and Dad's anniversary is in 3 weeks, she added. They'll both be there. I knew exactly what she was thinking, and it made me uncomfortable. Our parents deserved a celebration that wasn't remembered for the end of their children's marriages. But Emily said something I couldn't argue with. If we confront them privately first, they'll get ahead of it. They'll tell people we were jealous, unstable, already falling apart on our own. The only way the truth reaches this family before their version does is if it happens in front of everyone at once. She was right. Still, I refused to turn our parents' anniversary into an ambush without telling them first. 2 nights later, Emily and I drove to their house. Pause. My mother knew something was wrong the moment we walked in. We sat at the family table, and I showed my parents the messages, not the photographs, just the words. My mother cried quietly. My father read them twice, took off his glasses, and set them down. So they intend to come to our anniversary, he said, smile for the pictures, and let everyone believe your marriages simply fell apart on their own. That's what it looks like, I said. Emily offered to confront them somewhere else instead. She didn't want to be the reason the celebration was ruined. My parents exchanged a long look. Then my mother reached across the table and took Emily's hand. For 40 years, your father and I have told this family that a marriage is built on truth, she said. We're not going to celebrate that by helping 2 people hide a lie. My father nodded. The party continues. We make the toast. We celebrate the life your mother and I built. After that, you tell the truth. Nobody will ever say you ruined our anniversary. We decided this together. That changed everything. Pause. Before the party, I gave Jessica one final chance. She was reading on the couch when I sat beside her. Can I ask you something? Always. Are we okay? Is there anything happening that you haven't told me? Something flickered behind her eyes. Then she smiled and put her hand over mine. We're fine. You've just been tired lately. There it was, the beginning of the story she and Marcus had already agreed to tell. Do you feel like I've failed you somehow? I asked. Ryan, don't make this dramatic. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. Every marriage has hard stretches. We'll be fine. And there's no one else. The pause before her answer lasted a beat too long. Of course not. I nodded like I believed her. Later, while Jessica showered, her phone lit up on the dresser. The preview was from M. Just one line, it'll be fine. Nobody has to know it started before anything ended. I photographed the screen. Then I went back downstairs and helped Jessica pick out the framed photo we'd give my parents, all 6 of us smiling, taken at Christmas. Marcus's arm around Emily. Jessica beside me. Neither of them knew it was the last family photograph where their lies still worked. My parents' backyard was strung with white lights for their 40th anniversary. 40 small candles covered a cake large enough to feed the whole family, and photographs from 4 decades stood on tables around the yard. Jessica wore a deep red dress, greeted my relatives, helped my mother carry plates, and kept one hand on my arm whenever someone took a photograph. Marcus stood at the grill, exactly where he always stood at family gatherings, trading jokes with my uncle and checking on the kids playing near the fence. If I hadn't seen the messages, I would have believed every bit of it. Deception had become ordinary to them. Only 4 people knew what was coming, Emily, my parents, and me. At 8:15, my father tapped a fork against his glass. Everyone gathered near the center of the yard. He thanked my mother for 40 years of loyalty, patience, and truth. When he said that last word, his eyes moved briefly toward Marcus, who smiled back at him, no idea what was coming. My mother said a marriage survives when 2 people respect each other enough to be honest, especially when honesty is difficult. Then she looked at Emily and me. Tonight, our children need the same honesty from this family. The yard went still. Jessica's hand tightened around my arm. What does that mean? She whispered. I stepped away from her. Pause. 6 years ago, Jessica and I promised to be honest with each other, I said. Marcus made that same promise to Emily long before us. For almost a year, the 2 of them have been breaking those promises together. For 1 second, nobody reacted. Then several people turned toward Jessica and Marcus at once. Jessica stared at me like I'd spoken another language. Marcus set down his drink. "Ryan," he said, calm and measured, "whatever you think you found, this isn't the place." That was the voice Emily had warned me about, the reasonable one, the one that made everyone else sound emotional by comparison. "You're right that it isn't the place you chose," I said. "You chose hotel rooms, and my own backyard, and your own kitchen. This is just the place where everyone finds out." The calm slipped from his face. Emily stepped up beside me. She didn't hold up her phone or pass photographs around. She just spoke, steady and clear, loud enough to carry to every corner of the yard. "They've spent months telling themselves this would look like it just happened on its own, like both marriages simply fell apart, and they found each other after. Jessica told him herself, nobody has to know when it really started." No one moved. Jessica's face lost its color. "Ryan, you don't understand the context." "Then explain it." "We never wanted anyone to get hurt. My sister laughed once, without any humor in it. You wanted people to believe it wasn't your fault." Jessica looked at Marcus, waiting for him to say something. He stepped forward. "Both marriages already had problems," he said. "That part wasn't invented. Emily and I haven't been happy in a long time. Ryan works constantly." Jessica felt alone. What happened between us came out of that. For a moment, I almost admired how smoothly it came out, like he'd said it to himself enough times to believe it. "You're not describing our marriages," I said. "You're describing the story you two agreed to tell about them." My aunt covered her mouth. My uncle looked away from Marcus like he no longer recognized him. Then Jessica turned sharply toward Marcus. "You told me you had a place ready. You said after the party, we'd—" "Jessica, stop. You said you were leaving with me." "I said we'd figure it out." Emily reached into her bag and set a folded receipt on the table, the one from the restaurant near the airport, the apartment complex written on the back. "I called the leasing office yesterday," she said. "There's no application under your name. No deposit. No reservation. Nothing was ever ready." Jessica stared at him. It was the first honest reaction I'd seen from her all night. "You told me it was arranged," she said quietly. Marcus didn't answer. The love they'd used to justify 11 months of lying began falling apart in under a minute. Jessica had believed Marcus chose her. Marcus had only ever been choosing an exit. Pause. Marcus tried once more to steady the room. "Everyone needs to calm down. This is between the four of us." My father stepped forward. "You brought it into my son's house. You brought it into my daughter's house. Then you came here, to my anniversary, still planning to let my children carry the blame for what you did. You made it part of this family the day you decided that." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Jessica turned to me. "I was going to tell you." "When?" She opened her mouth and had nothing to put in it. "Before or after everyone believed it was my fault?" I asked. "I sat next to you on our couch 3 weeks ago and asked you directly. You kissed my cheek and told me there was no one else. I was afraid." "So were Emily and I said. "The difference is neither of us was the one causing it." She had no answer for that either. Emily slid her wedding ring off and set it on the table beside the receipt. "I'll have the papers sent to your attorney," she told Marcus. "From now on, we talk about the kids and nothing else." I turned to Jessica. "Your things will be packed tomorrow. My attorney will contact you." For the first time all night, she understood there would be no private conversation afterward where she could talk her way back into anything. Pause. What followed wasn't loud. It was quieter than that, and more final. My cousins walked the kids inside before they could piece together what was happening. My mother sat with Emily. My uncle walked over, switched off the grill, and told Marcus it was time to go. Marcus walked to his truck alone. Jessica stood near the table, watching him. Marcus, she called. He paused but didn't turn around. Where am I supposed to go? His answer was quiet enough that only the people closest heard it. I don't know. Then he left. Jessica looked at me like 6 years of marriage might still be enough to make me rescue her from her own choices. It wasn't. She left 10 minutes later. Nobody followed her. Pause. My father found me by the fence after the last car had pulled away. I'm sorry this became part of your anniversary, I said. He put a hand on my shoulder. Your mother and I had 40 honest years before tonight. One difficult hour doesn't erase them. Across the yard, my mother and Emily sat beneath the string lights. The cake had been cut. A few candles were still burning. The party wasn't ruined, he said. It reminded us what we were actually celebrating. For the first time in 3 weeks, I felt like I could breathe normally. Pause. It's been 4 months now. Emily filed for divorce 2 weeks after the party. I filed the week after that. Whatever Marcus and Jessica had told themselves it would look like once they didn't have to hide anymore, it didn't survive contact with the truth. Marcus told Emily that Jessica had pressured him. Jessica told me, in a single email I never answered, that Marcus had promised her a new life and disappeared the moment it became real. Neither of them seemed willing to admit they'd made every choice together. Some conversations don't need a sequel. Emily and Marcus speak only about the kids now. The children know their parents live separately. They don't know the rest, and they don't need to yet. They know they're loved, and for now, that's enough. Emily says they're doing better than she expected. Kids notice more than we give them credit for, and it turns out losing the version of their father who'd been lying to everyone wasn't the loss either of them feared it would be. Emily and I rarely talk about any of it anymore. We talk about ordinary things, work, repairs, our parents' holiday plans. Ordinary turned out to be exactly what we needed. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college, mostly because the quiet gave me room to think without anyone watching my face for cracks. Some mornings I still catch myself checking my own phone out of habit, the way you keep touching a scar just to make sure it's healed. Last month, Emily and I hosted Sunday dinner at my place for the first time, just the two of us, our parents, and her kids. No empty chairs saved out of habit. No one checked a phone under the table. No one disappeared onto the porch. It was smaller than any Sunday dinner we'd had in a decade. It was also the first one in years that felt completely honest. I still think about that night at 2:47 in the morning, standing in the dark kitchen, staring at a phone that wasn't mine. At the time, I thought I was looking at the moment my life ended. I understand it differently now. It was the moment the lie ended. And once the lie was gone, there was finally room to build a life that belonged to me again.